everyone. Well, welcome to the SoFlo Real Estate Show. Super excited to have you here. We are going to talk about a great topic today, and that's appraisals. But before we do, I have an update I wanted to share with everyone that I'm super excited about, and it's based on the feedback from my audience. So thank you, thank you, thank you. For moving forward in 2024, we will have a co-host, not just a guest speaker, but a co-host. And I'm so excited to announce that Julie Dinda of Radius Financial Group has agreed to be my co-host in 2024. And we're going to be bringing in difficult topics, fun topics, but we're going to be talking about real estate in South Florida, specifically Weston, Dade, and Broward. Julie, thank you for coming on board, and thank you for agreeing to be my co-host this year. You know how much I love you.
Always such a wonderful, Monday morning to get my week started and spend time answering questions for you and your clients and putting in my 2 cents. I'm excited.
Well, welcome. Well, today's no different. Today we're going to be talking about the hot topic of appraisals. Appraisals they go long in the process. We think about appraisals as soon as our client enters into a contract on the real estate side. Is the house really going to appraise? We think it is, but is it really going to appraise? We give the file to you as a lender, Julie, and the first thing you go is, I got to order the appraisal, right? Dependent upon the appraisal and how the appraisal responds to the market. What the first thing I want to talk about is how is an appraisal ordered and what is the purpose of that appraisal, Julie?
Sure, absolutely. So your first step is when you fill out an application with a lender. Go ahead and you're going to fill all that information out, and then the moment that goes into processing, we're going to order the appraiser to come to your house. Now, sometimes in crazy markets, it takes a long time for appraisers to come. In markets, you might apply for a mortgage, and you're going in to do your inspection, and the appraiser shows up, and it gets done in 10 days. So as a lender, we don't really understand or know what their schedule is like. So you always want to get it in as quick as possible so that you can get the information that you need. So heaven forbid something comes back that's on it that needs to be fixed. Maybe this doesn't match what the appraiser is saying. We time to be able to work with Athena, work with, our investors, and come to a solution so that we can bring the house to the closing table.
Yeah, excellent. The appraiser is important to all three parties. The first party that's super important to is the lender. They are the primary stakeholder in this whole process of appraisals. If the appraisal doesn't come back, at least at the offer price, then the lender has to make some decisions on what they can do, how they can restructure a loan for a client, if the loan can be restructured, and do the parties want to negotiate. So the lender, being the primary stakeholder in this, gets very, very involved in the outcome of the appraisal. And the second, also important, but not the primary, is the buyer. The buyer pays for the appraisal to get a third party to come in and share what they feel is going to be the actual fair market value of that property. So that's important to a buyer because a buyer doesn't want to overpay unless they choose to do so. So the appraisal process really gives that buyer that second opinion, as well as a comfort level of where the market value is for that particular home. And of course, Julie, the third party is the seller, who is subject to this whole process taking place. So those are the three parties really that are involved with the appraisal. But before we really get into how do you increase an appraisal value, how do you monitor the process, before we get into all of that, I want to talk about why appraisals are so relevant in today's market, specifically March 2024. We're getting into the height of the sales season for real estate. Sales are booming in South Florida, and appraisals aren't necessarily coming in at the highest rate, which is really the negotiated rate. So, Julie, talk to us a little about what you're seeing in the market and why you feel that appraisals aren't really coming in at that negotiated rate like they used to do.
We all know that a couple years ago, within the last 2 years, sales a little crazy, especially in our market, which is Florida. A lot of different states. People kind of exited those states and came to Florida, for whatever reason, the nice weather, politics, whatever it was, they came down, and they came down in droves. They came down with costs. They came down with pretty much anything you can think of just to buy a house. I mean, people were offering Netflix year accounts and, and that crazy stuff. So actually what that did to the appraisers is it kind of didn't really help with that fair market value, which is essentially what the appraisers are there to do. A buyer, we work for you as the buyer. When we do these appraisals, yes, we want the investor to make sure that they're not investing in something that's not where it needs to be, but also we don't want you to spend more money. We don't want you to buy a property that has maybe issues with, maybe mold or wood, wood eating, insects or whatever it is. So it's kind of another look at the house over and above what an inspector would do. What we're seeing currently now is we're seeing, whereas in 2 years ago, there were 6, 7, 8 properties to be able to use to come up with a value. Maybe now there's only 2 or 3 in that neighborhood. Maybe there's, they're going to have to use another neighborhood that's comparable to this neighborhood to be able to make it happen. So, we're seeing a lot of a lot of tightening, just because the appraiser is making sure that, they also get paid from the buyer and the lender. So they want to make sure that they're giving those accurate numbers, at the accurate time. So we're not seeing those overinflated prices. We're actually seeing more of, the true, fair market value for homes.
Yeah. And with that, Julie, one of the things I talk to my clients about, and I'm sure you do as well, is with those unicorn years that we talk about, right? Very with a wink wink. But prices escalated, in South Florida anywhere between 23% and 40% in a year, 2 year period. They escalated. And truthfully, appraisers couldn't keep up with it. And it's not because of the appraisal process. It's because the market was outperforming the fair market value, meaning that clients and buyers were saying, I'll put in $30,000 more, I'll put $100,000 more. And buyers were adding cash to the sale above and beyond what appraiser would return the value at. So with that, we have an escalated market. However, what we're seeing in 2024 and the end of 2023 was that prices are appreciating at a much slower rate. So with that, we're seeing the pendulum kind of switching. We're coming away from that hot sellers market into more what, is a traditional market. We have longer days on market. Homes aren't necessarily flying off the shelf. There's limited inventory, as you had mentioned. So now we're seeing that appraisers are returning values that may be below what the contracted price is. And, that is a reality in today's market.
Even appraisers were so inundated with jobs that appraisers would do drive-by appraisals. They would just pretty much go off of whatever the sales price was, and they'd say, "Yeah, looks about right for me," and then sign it off, and then go on to the next one because they were so inundated. So, no, appraisers are taking their time and really looking at it and really doing the research that they should have been doing, then as well. So, but
Yeah.
it is a fair market value, which is great, which I think
It
helps
is
the
great.
market.
It is
Mhm.
great. We have some more examples as we go through our podcast this morning, but I do want to jump over to pricing strategy. We were just talking about how markets change and the pendulum is swinging. So as a seller goes to look at the value of their home, that's a big consideration because, there's fantasy price is when when a seller is pricing their home and their expectations is not in alignment with the market, right? Last year, the price would have been maybe 10, 15% higher. Today, maybe it's not 10 to 15% higher. So, that's a fantasy price. The real price is when the appraiser comes out to evaluate whether or not the price that the buyer and seller agreed to is considered fair market value. And that's what we're talking about today, that fair market value pricing. So, in our industry, we do have those three, those three parties. And Julie, so we have here's a great question for you. One of my buyers was asking about this. They have a 20% down payment. So they're like, Athena, I'm going to put 20% down. We put our offer in. Now what happens if the appraisal comes in lower? Well, there's always the three choices, right? The three choices for any buyer and sellers to negotiate on a new price,
Yep.
for the buyer to pay the full gap, or for the buyer to cancel and take their deposit, of course, if they're within the contractual period. Those are the three choices. But sometimes they do want that house and they do want to agree to pay a higher price, but they don't necessarily want to pay it out of pocket. So now we have to go back to maybe restructuring their loan in order to be able to what we call save the sale. So, Julie, if someone has 20% down, they have to put in, I'm just going to make up a number, $40,000 more because of the appraised value, and they still want that house, but they simply don't want to take it out of their pocket. What can they do with that type of loan?
Tell people, this is just such a great question, because when people sit down with me and we talk about budgets and we go over, how much they have and what they're willing to spend monthly, and you go through all of that together, people say 20%. Now, the reason that people put 20% down on a house is because they don't want to pay that mortgage insurance. So that's the insurance that you pay to make sure that you actually pay. What happens is it's insurance for the bank. So heaven forbid you foreclose and you don't pay your bill, the bank is going to get their money because they have insurance on that money. So they're going to get it regardless, which opens up the banks to give you better rates, to offer you actual money. There's lots of different reasons for that. But essentially what ends up happening is, when you say 20% down, and currently now, because of the rates being the way that they are, banks are being very lenient when it comes to that mortgage insurance. So whereas 2 years ago you didn't put 20% down, maybe your mortgage insurance was $275 a month, right? Well, now it's like maybe 100, maybe less than that, maybe 50% less than that. Maybe it's $60 a month extra for you to pay so that you can put that $40,000 out, not from your savings account, but from the 20% that you were going to put down anyway. So it's just a really great way to kind of think about that. You can use your money in so many different ways. And times, that's the route that I tell my buyers to go.
That's a great point. PMI, as we call it, mortgage insurance. Nobody likes to pay it. But as you mentioned, if the investors have changed their program where it's a much more palatable, cost in order to buy a home. And remember, everyone, once you get back to that 20% equity, you can refinance and you can make a different choice as far as removing that mortgage insurance.
And one more really quick thing to add, VA loans, you don't pay PMI anyway, so if you have that VA loan, then that's not even a conversation that we need to have because that won't be on there regardless. But keep in mind that once you have 20% equity in the house, that PMI is gone. So if you're going to put 10% down, you're not paying that extra $100 for the entire life of your loan. You're paying that extra $100 until you get that 20% down on that property. And then once that happens, that PMI is gone. So you can't really think of it. You think of it more of like the convenience of not taking the money out of your savings or your IRA. And that's the convenience fee that I guess you would pay. But eventually that will go away.
Especially when here in South Florida, where prices are always appreciating or adjusting.
Absolutely.
But, real estate is a great way of building wealth. But we'll talk about that on a different podcast. But thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. And it's a great point is, working with your realtor and working with your lender through these different challenges is really going to help you make the best decision and moving forward with whatever property you choose. But I want to get on to it. What do appraisers look at most? What are some of the top items you feel appraisers look at in valuing homes?
I would say general condition of the property, the age property, any improvements that you've made. Improvements, that's always like a funny thing. It's like, someone comes in and they're like, I bought this gold gold, for my house, and they were $100,000, and it's like, well, Mr. Smith are going to pull those $100,000 cabinets out, and that's not worth 100,000. So when you do improvements, you want to improve your kitchen, your bathroom, maybe the floors, something like that.
The
Curb appeal,
windows, the
yeah,
roof,
the
the curb
window,
appeal.
listen, if you don't have to go up on a ladder in a Category 3 storm at the last second, hurricane windows are very, very, very great. Curb appeal. A lot of people don't think about that, but planting those trees and taking care of your lawn and and taking care of all that, that's important. Your air conditioning, all of your power wall, your electrical panel, and bed, bath, bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, how many baths you have, your actual lot size, that's important. And it goes into the pool. If you have for living, that's always huge, especially in South Florida.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the basics,
No, I
unless you
agree
have.
with you. And you know what else is really interesting, Julie? This is really interesting. When I meet with a potential client who's looking to sell their home, the first thing I talk about is how to prepare your home for sale, right? And what do we talk about? We talk about improvements, talking about decluttering. We talk about making the house presentable in its best light, attract the most buyers, etc. But when you go to the appraisal piece, the correlation is there. It's the same requirements.
Exactly.
So it's
How
kind of,
many
yeah,
times have you had a buyer that you walk into a house where they have pink and purple walls and they don't even want to move on to the next room? They're like, nope, we're out. And it's like,
it's like a
wow, that would have
stop.
cost you,
We
yeah, it would
want
have
this
cost you
house.
$200 to paint the walls, and that's important.
It's important for both the buyer and then when the appraiser walks in, he's like, oh, this house needs to
This
be
is going to be
painted.
dated.
This is so you start to
Exactly.
dings on it. So, preparing a home for sale and preparing your home for the appraiser to give you the highest price, it's somewhat the same thing. When
Yes,
I'm hearing you talk, it's just like that.
absolutely.
So
Exactly.
you had mentioned a couple of things. What hurts an appraisal? Location. If you're living near a power line, that's going to be a ding. It's just the way it is. If you're in an area where there is industry around you, that's going to be less desirable than being in a gated community or in a community that's only housing that's very homogenous. It's the way it is. Necessary updates, cabinets. Are your cabinets attached? And do they look good in the kitchen? Or are they dated and, they're a little bit, you know, they can use a little tightening. So these are important questions. The other one is, carpeting on floors. Look at floors. So
Yes.
carpeting is important. If you have old carpet, you got to rip it out and put something new down. So prepare your home for the appraiser. Julia, let's go into some fun questions that I've gathered from clients over the last week. Okay, I'm going to
Okay,
ask
let's do it.
a question, and then you're going to tell me the response. Okay. So this was the question. What is an appraiser looking at? What did you want to know an appraiser is looking at? So one of the first questions, you're not going to believe it, but this is going to be fun. Do appraisers look at weeds in the front yard?
They do. They want. Well, I don't know if they necessarily go on a search for weeds and and all of that, but they are looking for curb appeal. So if you have if you don't have a power washer that comes in, there's been properties that we've been at where we didn't even know there was a sidewalk there because it's so overgrown that the grass kind of grew on top of the sidewalk, and that's something that maybe someone with a wheelchair or something would look at. And if they don't know there's a way to get up there, then they won't even look at the property. So obviously an appraiser will also look at that because they want to make sure that people with, special needs and stuff can do that kind of stuff. So they do look for that kind of stuff.
They do. They do. Front landscaping, curb appeal is so important. Okay, wiring. How important is wiring to an appraiser?
For it. It's this. It can cause fires. Literally go in. They will turn on every single light. They will turn. They will go into your electrical panel. They'll plug in their little machine. They'll make sure that not only is it working, but it's working to the standards that it needs to work. Because it's like, I always say this. My grandma, she's always like her kitchen light would ding, like, go lighter and then darker and then lighter and darker. And we would say, why is that doing that? And then my grandfather would just bang the wall and then it would fix. And I'm not going to do that. Fraser wants to know why it's, it's going up and down like that.
Yeah, why
So,
is it dimming, right? It's like, oh God, yeah, no more punching the wall to get that fixed. You're absolutely right. Okay, here's another
exactly.
one.
Yeah, the eighth.
Here's a fun one. Is the appraiser going to look inside my refrigerator?
Besides to see if it's working, I mean, I don't think they care what you had for dinner per se, but or if there's enough food in there, but they may, turn on the electrical panel, open up the refrigerator, and make sure that it's working correctly.
Yes, absolutely. They're also looking for the features of it. If it's one of those high grade, touch it, you get the recipe on
Sure.
there,
Yeah.
that's going to get a little bit of a bump as opposed to probably what I have, which is the standard French refrigerator with an ice maker. But you're
Exactly.
absolutely
No, that
correct.
is true. That is true. They will look at that.
Yeah, they're looking at all the features. Here's another one. Holes in a wall. Does an appraiser care if there's some holes in the wall? We're not talking pin tacks,
Um,
but maybe a
yeah,
doorknob banged
I mean,
into it.
if they're distracting, like, you walk right in and, the door's not opening properly, maybe the stopper's not in the door and it keeps slamming into the wall, that's something that they could possibly take a look at. If there's holes from you trying to fix your own electrical, that could be something that they dive a little deeper into to see what exactly you fixed and if duct tape was the solution, which is not good.
And you know what? We've
By
both
the
seen
way.
that. So that's why we
Yeah.
bring it up because we've both seen that one. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Okay. Well, the appraiser look in my shower. How important is plumbing to an appraiser?
It's big because, if you have kids, you want a tub, is it a sit-alone, tub over the shower, what are the features? I mean, really you want to know what the condition is. If you can't use the tub, then you really give it value, as a bathroom, if never used it before and they just put all their old tools in it and it's all rusty. So, yeah, they will look at those conditions for sure.
Okay, let's get to the last one, which is a big one. Floor types. We homeowners have lots of different options for floors, but when it comes to time to sell, and the appraisers coming in, the condition of the floor is important. Julie, talk to us a little bit about tile floors, carpeting, and all.
Agree. And I know that appraisers definitely, follow the flow. They just want the flow. They want to know, what the condition is of the floor. So if you got carpets and they're brand new and you just put them down, you're not going to get anything against that. If you have carpets from 1980 that my grandfather still has on his floor, then you might have some issues with that as selling them on the fact that you're not going to have to come in. You're right at the top of what money you can spend, and now you're going to have to put new floors in and get new stuff. Like, they want to make sure with the appraised value that they let you know where that's going to be, even including your floors.
True.
Yeah.
Maybe including the floors. Appraisers have a hard job. They have to look at what's going on in the market, the trends. They have to compare the property to the other properties in the neighborhood. So they have to be very knowledgeable about what is standard in that neighborhood. And then they have to take a look at your particular home and determine whether or not those features and benefits of your home detract or add value to the overall, appraised amount. So it is a difficult position to be in, and it's a very difficult job is to be an appraiser. So the more a homeowner can assist in the process and do more to make their home more appealing and more inviting, the better the appraised value is going to be returned. So let's get to the 8
And
ways
how much
to
more money you're going to
increase
get,
appraise. Yeah, the more money you're going
and
to
all the
get in
money
your
you're going to
pocket.
get.
Absolutely. So, on to how to get more money. Let's talk about the 8 ways to
Yes.
increase your appraised value.
Okay.
Julie, take us through those 8 ways. Just real quick, what do we got?
Sure, I would say clean and declutter. Energy efficient, front paint. Your curb appeal is important. Exterior, front door, kitchen upgrades. useful, meaning, you want, if you make an office in the middle of your living room and you put a wall up, like that doesn't really make any sense, like people want a big living room where they can invite their families in. So, I think those are probably my key, 8 ways, those are good ways to increase the value of the property.
And they're doable.
Or
You know,
doable,
that
correct.
those
That
are
don't cost
all
too much
very,
money.
very
Yep.
doable. So that's great. Julian, this has been really good. But before we go, a little bit of fun to our podcast. And what we're adding is, Julie, take it away, drum roll. If they only listen to us.
Only listen to us. Yes,
Oh
they
my
only
gosh.
listen to us. Let's talk appraisals. So, I was working with this amazing couple for almost 9 months. We were going back and forth. They just kept watching the news, kept watching everything that was happening, and kept saying, "Oh, it's just getting worse and worse and worse." And we're gonna wait. The rates are going up, and everything's gonna happen, and we're gonna wait. Even though I was being creative and we could do all kinds of fun stuff and we could be creative with what you have. And so finally they decided, wait anymore. Like our kids are going to school in August. Like we gotta just jump on it now. I mean, there's nothing else we can do. So I said, okay, great. Let's go ahead. We'll put all of your information in and everything. And fortunately, they don't qualify. They don't qualify for the house because the appraised values have gone, that's what they're looking for. They're out of their range now, rate based on, all these different factors. The thing to tell people is if you can buy now. We can always be creative later. You can always refinance. You can always pull cash out. You can always do a HELOC. We're not you buy a house that you can't afford, period. So if you are, if your debt to income ratios are off, I promise you're not going to buy a house at all anyway. But not going to put you in a place where you can't be. But the longer you wait, risk you are to not being able to buy a house. So now they have to go and rent when they were perfectly viable. They could already be in their house, and their house would already probably be $20,000 more in equity because in Florida just keeps going up and keeps going up. So I say, Harry, I know it's a crazy market. I know it's, everyone, watches the news and thinks all that stuff. That's not happening in Florida. In Florida, prices are going up. In Florida, schools are amazing with all of the different programs and all the stuff that they have for kids and schools. It's only getting better. People from other states are only coming in. You purchase a property and it will only be an investment for you. You got to do it. Just jump on it. Listen to me.
Well, you know
Seriously.
what? This is our segment. If you only listen, but that's truthful. And unfortunately, there are many buyers out there that can probably identify with that statement that you made that the pricing just became out of reach. 2 years ago, 1 year ago, I've talked to buyers too, and it's like, I don't know what to tell you. This is the price. It's not coming down. Right? The price is going up slower, but it's going up. It's not coming down. What's going on with the interest rates? That changes on a daily basis. That we can manage. Managing a house price at an accelerating market, there's nothing you could do. So, as Julie said, get in. If you'd like us to help you, we will be more than happy to. But talk to a realtor, talk to a lender, make sure you have a good team around you. And again, if you'd like Julie and I to be part of your team, we're here for you. But going back to appraisals, I think, Julie, looking forward, we're going to continue to see the market becoming more traditionalized, and we're going to see the appraisals coming back down to where they need to be. But in small interim, we're going to see a bit of a gap between what the appraised value is going to be and what the contracted value is. We're going to continue to see
Correct.
that gap come together.
Say too before we leave, having a good real estate agent is very key in that too. We actually have a loan that we're working right now for a VA property that came back, up below appraised value, and we were able to, work with the sellers claim the situation, what the appraiser was looking at, what they based everything on. And if your buyer's agent has a good relationship with your selling agent, and the buyer's agent can explain everything and make them understand why it is the way that it is, they might be able to, reduce the price of the property, as well. So always with people you can trust and people that know what they're doing, because it really can save you hundreds and thousands of dollars.
That's true. It can. Having a professional that has the experience, who has the initiative, who, advocates, it's so important. So make sure whoever you hire, you interview them. And again, Julie and I will always be here for you. Julie,
Always.
thank you for being my co-host in
Yay!
2024. You're fabulous. And
Yay.
yep, absolutely. We'll have more hot topics every Monday. And if you have any questions, you'll find our contact information in the comments at the bottom. All right. So, anyway, everybody have a great week and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, Julie.
Happy
Thanks again.
Monday. Bye.
Happy Monday.